I, in my stories and novels, often write about counterfeit worlds, semi-real worlds, as well as deranged private worlds, inhabited often by just one person, while meantime the other characters either remain in their own worlds throughout or are somehow drawn into one of the peculiar ones. This theme occurs in the corpus of my 27 years of writing. At no time did I have a theoretical or conscious explanation for my preoccupation with these pluriform pseudo-worlds, but now I think I understand. What I was sensing was the manifold of partially actualized realities lying tangent to what evidently is the most actualized one, the one which the majority of us, by consensus gentium, agree on. I wrote out these dreams in novel after novel, story after story. To name two in which this prior ugly present obtained most clearly, I cite The Man in the High Castle and my 1974 novel about the U.S. as a police state, called Flow My Tears, the Policeman Said. I'm going to be very candid with you. I wrote both novels based on fragmentary residual memories of such a horrid slave state world. People claim to remember past lives. I claim to remember a different, very different present life. I know of no one who has ever made this claim before, but I rather suspect that my experience is not unique. What perhaps is unique is the fact that I am willing to talk about it. We are living in a computer-programmed reality, and the only clue we have to it is when some variable is changed and some alteration in our reality occurs. We would have the overwhelming impression that we were reliving the present, déjà vu, perhaps in precisely the same way, hearing the same words, saying the same words. I submit that these impressions are valid and significant, and I will even say this: such an impression is a clue that at some past time point a variable was changed, reprogrammed as it were, and that because of this an alternative world branched off.
What is this place? It's not supposed to be here.
Where are we? Do your ears ring at night?
What do you want?
I want to live.
I just need to get back to the real world.
This is the real world.
We're artists, me and you. We're weaving dreams.
Doesn't it seem like somebody else's fantasy?
We're going on a trip out there.
These are challenging times.
This will plunge us into war.
You can't hide it. I can see everything.
What have I done to deserve a life like this?
This isn't right. This isn't real.
You're dreaming.
I know that it's just a stupid world.
So just yesterday I put out this video on the square map simulation trap and got a lot of instant feedback on that, and a lot of great feedback and support, and also a lot of pushback, not surprisingly, because a lot of people are, of course, latching on to these kinds of ideas of simulation theory and the Pac-Man model type of thing. But I wanted to talk more about this anyways, and it's kind of funny because one of the comments said something like 67 people, I'm sure it's more now, who have thumbs down the video, but 67 Phillip K Dick fans don't like this video, and that made me laugh. Because actually that was something that I was even thinking about mentioning something in the video, but never got around to it. I had some footage, right? Phillip K Dick, simulation theory, and all that connection. I've talked about it before, but there's a lot of new people and a lot of people who probably didn't see it and whatever. But literally like 10 minutes later, I take a break from YouTube and I'm checking out Amazon Prime, and lo and behold, there's this new Amazon original series called Electric Dreams, which is this anthology series based off of like short stories by none other than Phillip K Dick. So I figured I might as well just go ahead and talk a little bit more about Phillip K Dick, who honestly is he's one of the most fascinating examples of something that, you know, I talk a lot about on the channel in terms of this relationship between this whole grand deception of scientism and, you know, its relationship to, you know, the Mystery Babylon religions, and, you know, and how science is just a repackaging of all these ancient mystical ideas and transhumanism and all these other things, right? And so, of course, science fiction is just a very important piece of the puzzle there. It's a very important vehicle for taking, you know, how all these ideas that have been around for a long time, going all the way back to the ancient mystery schools, are actually being disseminated amongst the general public in a way where it's not necessarily understood as, you know, these are spiritual themes and spiritual ideas, specifically mystical and magical spiritual ideas. Because once you, just like that famous quote from Arthur C. Clarke, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic, and that kind of says it all right there. And yeah, so anyways, it's Electric Dream series. I did watch the first episode, and the rest of them, you know, they look pretty well done, lots of crazy visuals. And of course, just like with all of Phillip K. Dick's work, you know, this main theme is this question of reality. What is reality? And as I'm sure many of you know, Phillip K. Dick's work, he's probably the most influential science fiction writer that a lot of people still don't know about necessarily. But they've been making, even on Amazon, with The Man from High Castle, and then older stuff like Through a Scanner Darkly and Total Recall. I mean, these are stuff I kind of grew up with, right? And then, of course, the Matrix movies, you know, which is probably the biggest example, even though it's not directly based on a story that he wrote. It's basically an amalgamation of all these ideas that he introduced. And so I've talked about this before, and many of you have probably seen this clip where he is talking about simulation theory, the idea of being in a computer program for the first time at this little press conference thing. So this concept of simulation theory in the context of computer virtual reality, Phillip K. Dick is kind of the premier entry point into where this entered the genre of science fiction. What a lot of people don't know, and this is why Phillip K. Dick gets really interesting as a figure, is a little while back, you know, because I've been listening to lots of different biography pieces and things about his life, but there is this one called The Mystical Experiences of Phillip K. Dick. And I'm not going to play the whole thing because it's kind of long, but I'll play a little clip here. And the long and short of it is that this guy, sort of right in line with a lot of other examples that we've looked at, where they were either scientists or science fiction writers, or they have some sort of connection to, you know, the occult or mysticism or some sort of spiritual influence upon their work and their writing, and the ideas that they came out with that was purportedly to be from their own imagination was really not. It was, you know, they had a muse, so to speak. And when you listen to Phillip K. Dick talking about this experience that he had in the 70s, if you understand the reality of the spiritual realm and the angelic and demonic realm from a solid biblical understanding, there was really no way to avoid the simple conclusion that this dude was 100% straight up demon possessed.
I had finally become half crazed with horror and grief at the state of the world, was looking for some enlightenment. So in '74, there came upon me at the trough of my life, at the point where I saw nothing but inexplicable suffering, there came to me the beatific vision, which calmed all my sense of horror at the world and my sense of the transcendent power of evil. And on the basis of this vision, we're speaking now of a time slightly over 5 years ago, just a bit over 5 years ago, I set out to write a book in which this was expressed in a way that made rational sense rather than simply mystical sense. That my mystical experience with the beatific vision had to be formulated into some rational structure that could be transferred to other people. What did this amount to philosophically? My mental anguish was simply removed from me, you know, as if by a divine fiat, you know, that God...
This just happened to you on your own?
Yes.
There's no one else involved?
Yes, it just happened to me on my own. It was as if the primordial curse or fall had lifted from me, you know, and that I was restored, healed. It was a sort of, you know, intervention of a kind of a psychological, mystical type, which I describe in Valis, my new book.
What is the title?
Valis, V-A-L-I-S. It stands for Vast Active Living Intelligence System. What happened was that some transcendent divine power, which was not evil but was benign, intervened to restore my mind, to heal my mind and heal my body, and give me a sense of the beauty of the world, the joy of the world, the sanity of the world. And out of this, I forged a concept which is relatively simple and possibly unique in theology. And that is the basis of my insight, and it took me 4.5 years to formulate it after this experience, is that the irrational is the primordial stratum of the universe. It comes first in time, and it is primary in ontology, in levels of essence. And it evolves from irrationality, chaos, and blindness into rationality. That is, the irrational gives birth to the rational. And that the history of the universe is a movement from irrationality, which means chaos, cruelty, blindness, pointlessness, generates evolutionarily a rational structure which is harmonious, which interlocks, which is interlinked in a way where it is orderly and beautiful and harmonious. But that this comes into existence only fitfully, slowly, sporadically, like lightning discharges here and there. That it's not ubiquitous, as I supposed in the novel Ubik. That it's found in Jewish mysticism as it's called the Shekinah, which means divine presence. And the theory is that it's only intermittent and from time to time and from place to place. Now, I conceived of it as evolving out of the irrational, that the primordial creator deity, the way I express it in Valis, is the primordial creator deity was essentially deranged from our standpoint, that we are, as humans, an evolution above the primordial deity. We actually stand, it is somebody in the Middle Ages once said, we are pygmies, but we stand on the shoulders of giants, and therefore we see more than they see. We human beings are created, and yet we are more rational than the Creator himself, who spawned us.
Oh, wonderful idea.
Yeah, and the whole evolution of the cosmos is away from blindness, destructiveness, and the pointless clashing together toward a coherency and a harmonious interrelationship. And so, in the way, I guess Teilhard de Chardin would be one of the few people, you know, that had this vision where he talks about point omega, toward which we're evolving. But I see the rational and benign divine power as a late development in the history of the universe, not as the creator, but as coming onto the scene, finding chaos, finding irrationality, and beginning to organize it into a cosmos. And that in a sense there is a kind of conflict between these two deities, or principles. They could be regarded as the principle of disorder versus the principle of order. But the primary condition of reality is disorder, and out of disorder, order forms. The universe moves from disorder to order. And disorder I equate with evil, and order I equate with the benign. My outlook is based on, not on faith, but on the actual encounter that I had in '74 with a mysterious, powerful, rational mind, which was unfathomable to me as to what it was, to what it called itself. It seemed to resemble Ubik in many respects. Ubik, the entity that I had written about in the novel by the title.
When you say an encounter, was this a sort of hallucination or a vision or something?
It was an invasion of my mind by a transcendently rational mind. It was almost as if I had been insane all my life, and suddenly I had become sane. Now, I've actually thought of that as a possibility, that I actually have been psychotic until 1974, from 1928 when I was born until March of 1974. But I don't think that's the case. I mean, I may have been somewhat whacked out, and somewhat eccentric for years and years and years. But I wasn't all that crazy, because I'd been given Rorschach tests and so on. This was a rational mind that was not a human rational mind. It was more like an artificial intelligence. Now, I don't pretend to know what it was. On Thursdays and Saturdays, I think it was God. On Tuesdays and Wednesdays, I think that it was extraterrestrials. Sometimes I think it was the Soviet Union, the Academy of Sciences was trying out their psychotronic microwave telepathic I thought about that. I tried different theories, I tried every theory. I thought of the Rosicrucians, I thought of the Russians, I thought of extraterrestrials, I thought of God, I thought of Christ.
Was it something you heard then, or is it more than that? Just trying to visualize the experience.
It invaded my mind and assumed control of my motor centers and did my acting and thinking for me.
But you had your own consciousness there as well.
Yeah, but I was a spectator to it.
Oh.
And it first of all, it set about healing me physically, and my little 4-year-old boy, had undiagnosed birth defect. And this mind, whose identity was totally obscure to me, I even thought it might have been Elijah, it might have been the Holy Spirit. I thought of everything. All I can say is I don't know, was that it was equipped with tremendous technical knowledge, engineering knowledge, medical knowledge, cosmological knowledge, philosophical knowledge. The first thing that it informed me was to be very wary of heavy metals. And I've even thought that it was one of the great Illuminati of history, one of the great Rosicrucians, like it might have been Paracelsus. I thought for a long time that it might have been Paracelsus. I thought it might be a previous incarnation of myself that had broken through. It had memories dating back over 2,000 years. It spoke Greek. It spoke Hebrew. It spoke Sanskrit. There wasn't anything that it didn't seem to know. It immediately set about putting my affairs in order. It fired my agent. It fired my publisher. It was very practical. It decided that the apartment had not been vacuumed adequately and not recently enough. it decided that I should stop drinking wine entirely because it was a sediment, and it turned out I had abundance of uric acid in my system, and switched me to beer. It made elementary mistakes. It kept calling the dog he and the cat she, which annoyed my wife since I knew and she knew that the dog was a female and the cat was a male. It kept calling her ma'am, and it would lapse into what turned out to be Koine Greek when it would fall into a contemplative state. She recognized it as Koine Greek because she'd taken some Attic Greek in school. I didn't even recognize it as a language. I thought it was just nonsense. It was very intelligent and had a firm and shrewd grasp of business matters. It remargined my typewriter's margining. I even thought it might have been the soul of my friend Jim Pike come back from the dead. And I don't exclude the possibility either, Charles. I'm not willing to exclude the possibility that Jim Pike came back to me as his son Jimmy came back to him, because it had a tremendous interest in early Christian theology and in Zoroastrianism, which Jim Pike had confessed to me once he believed was probably the true religion. It was very versed in Zoroastrianism and knew a great deal about the Essenes and the therapeutic.
How did your wife perceive all this? Did you tell her what was going on?
Oh yes, we discussed it. She was impressed by the fact that because of the tremendous pressure that it put on people in my business, that I made quite a lot of money very rapidly. We began to get checks in for thousands of dollars, money that was owed me, that this mind was conscious existed in New York and had never been coughed up. It also wrote a letter to the Roman Catholic Church, informing the Roman Catholic Church that my writing contained allusions to the New Testament, which were to edify the Roman Catholic Church that a miracle had occurred, and that it was very busy and active. Does this interest you?
How could it not?
Okay. It had one overweening concern. This was in March of 1974. It informed me that a group of conspirators had murdered the Kennedys, Dr. King, and Bishop Pike. That it, the mind that had taken me over, had seen the conspirators. The mind then graphically represented itself as the Cumaean Sibyl.
What's the what?
The Sibyl of Cumae.
Oh, my logical knowledge is not very...
Well, the Cumaean Sibyl was the Roman equivalent of the Delphic Sibyl of Greece. The Cumaean Sibyl advised the Roman Republic when it was in danger. She had the so-called Sibylline books, which were consulted by the Roman Republic. Well, now I've let it out of the bag, haven't I? I said she. It was female. She was female. She had the Sibylline books. She showed me the Sibylline books. She said the Republic was in danger. She meant the American Republic. She said that once again the Empire threatened to take over. She was there to see that the Empire was destroyed. I shouldn't be saying this. This is really stupid of me, Charles. I shouldn't be talking.
So yeah, pretty crazy stuff. But the only other thing I kind of wanted to comment on real quickly was just, you know, in the course of kind of interacting with different people and comments and conversations and things, debating this whole idea of simulation theory, and a lot of people that are gravitating towards it, you know, coming from different angles and different perspectives. And I think a lot of people have different ideas of what even simulation theory really is all about. And so that was kind of something that I think if you're really familiar with the context that Phillip K Dick takes to, you know, the topic, he's over and over again he's using this descriptor of of dreams and likening it to dreams, very vivid dreams. And that to me is really key, I think, to really understand like why, like as sort of a concept and a belief system, why this really is so dangerous, spiritually speaking. Because that really is what it is all about. A lot of people, they kind of, I don't know, I think, especially when you're talking about it in the context of cosmology and trying to figure out a flat earth and how do the heavens work, and I think what some people are really think that they're meaning when they talk about simulation theory is more just like the idea of a holographic projection of the heavens, or what I would say is a more accurate description in terms of a hyperdimensional reality that is overlapping our three-dimensional reality. And so the higher dimensions, the spiritual dimensions, the spiritual realms, which, you know, we can go outside and look up and see, but they don't necessarily just operate according to all the same physical rules of the universe that all the things on the earth do, in terms of measuring curvature for once, or whatever other scientific experimentation you're trying to do. When you turn around and apply that to the heavens and assume that, you know, the angles and the motions and all these things, you know, which goes back to the Copernican principle, right? This is a philosophical assumption that kicked off the whole thing, that it's all based upon, was that it's all part of the ruled by the same physics, the same mechanics. And so you start with that assumption, and then you start tracking the stars and looking at their motions, and then trying to figure out, you know, you quantify it all, and then start trying to put it in formulas, and then you extrapolate, well, they must have different gravitations and masses and orbits and all these things, right? So that's what Kepler and Newton and Galileo and all these guys started to do based on this philosophical assumption. So this is what is kind of ironic, is that a lot of people unknowingly then just take that and carry it with them. They reject the globe. They go, okay, there's no curvature, so it must be flat. A truly flat Earth, like a plane, and whether you think the North Pole is in the middle of some sort of circular setup, or infinite plane, or Pac-Man, whatever, no curvature just means it's flat. And then of course people want to know how the stars work, and what's your model for the heavens and all that, and then that's where people kind of go in different directions and start gravitating towards different things. But like I said in the last video, simulation theory is not, it's not just a simple matter of going, it solves this little problem of the heavens, or like how do you go east-west and keep going in the same direction. You know, it's like this infinite loop. It's this realm that you can't escape, right? It's like, so, but they don't understand that really what you're talking about is that all of reality is a dream in that sense. And this is why it bleeds into the whole context of consciousness, what is reality? And the technology side is really almost irrelevant. To me, it's just like a plot device. It's just a science fiction, even now, even in the way we see it being introduced through things like, Elon Musk and Ray Kurzweil and all these other transhumanists and people wanting to upload memories into, some sort of cloud or transcend physicality altogether. This is why all these topics are related. I mean, they really are. And once you understand like how much this is just a repackaging and a regurgitation of Eastern mysticism, which essentially teaches that the physical world, the world that we're in right now, is the illusion, and transcendence and achieving enlightenment and nirvana is about escaping that illusion, escaping the confinement of the physical realm, escaping the matrix. I mean, I know you guys hear people talking about this all the time, and you got guys like David Icke and other, all these New Age truthers who've been around for a long time. This is what they've been pushing, like ever since the truth movement even started. And even Alex Jones, in his own way, I think, does, even though a lot of people don't realize it. But it's just repackaged Eastern mysticism, where the spiritual and the physical are sort of pitted against each other, and one is an illusion, and the other is reality. Right? Or there's higher levels of reality, and that's where you kind of get the whole nested simulations, nested dreams. And so Phillip K Dick, he's always, so many of his stories kind of deal with the confusion and deal with like the disorientation and the whole question of trying to figure out which one is the real one. And I think he really grappled with that. He really did. I think he was a pretty tortured dude. Obviously, as you can imagine. I mean, being possessed to where, like, this entity would take control of him and have conversations and write letters and, just walk around. Like, and he didn't even, know what was happening. There was a lot of confusion. But when you understand the reality of the demonic realm and the reality of, you're talking about an ancient spiritual being who is evil and who is against God and trying to deceive humanity, and so they seize upon certain individuals that are going to help them achieve their broader goal. This is, whether it's authors, whether it's certain spiritual teachers or politicians or, billionaire entrepreneurs or whatever, and these become their puppets. I mean, this is really the only way to understand the full scope of the conspiracy with the capital C that spans centuries, spans millennia, that has led everything all up to this point where we're at now, and where these concepts are they're just washing over the world. I mean, you can't tell me that simulation theory is not being pushed by the mainstream Illuminati-controlled media when I turn on Amazon Prime and it's like plastered across the front page. I mean, Electric Dreams is the name of the series. I mean, it's right in your face. So I'll leave some more links in the description below and you can check that out, but definitely something to understand. I mean, we just had the reboot of Blade Runner come out, Blade Runner 2045. Who do you think was the creative mind behind Blade Runner? So you've got artificial intelligence, simulation theory, virtual reality, all of these concepts that are, in reality, they're all just subcategories of, a broader singular narrative. And it's not a new one. Transhumanism is not a new idea. It's just being encouched in this technological framework with robots and computers and all this stuff. But really, you can take that all away and it just applies to spirituality. And that's the whole goal. That's what, if you understand what the Matrix is about, that's really what it all is. I mean, when I first saw the Matrix movies, and I specifically remember in the second one, right? The first one, it's all about computers, and then at the end of the second Matrix movie, where the squiddies are coming to get them, and they think they're done for, and Neo stands up and uses his same powers that he has in the Matrix, and uses it in the quote-unquote real world, and stops them, and they're all like, how the heck did he do that? That right there is kind of one of the big giveaways in terms of like what they're saying. That again, so the same principles that apply inside this computer program, that all of reality is just the same way. It's just they're showing you that this is an analogy. It's a spiritual reality. It's a metaphysical, or it's a spiritual analogy, a metaphysical analogy for this occult magical belief system. And so trying to take all of this and say, oh, no, we're not pushing this in an occult way or, a magical way. This is Christian simulation. I heard this many times yesterday, that, we believe in Christian simulation theory. And that is a contradiction in terms. It really is. Because you can't say we live in a Christian dream world. Because really what you're doing is when you start trying to inject the concept of God into simulation theory, and again, going back to the whole dream connection, really what you end up doing is introducing this idea of that reality is simply just a dream in the mind of God, or that it's all a dream, that we're all sort of dreaming at the same time. And that's why, well, if you can change your dreams, right, going back to the lucid dreaming thing, if you can actively participate in a dream, you can actively participate in the dream that we call reality, right? And so essentially then what you've entered into is pantheism or panpsychism or whatever you want to call it. So where you're using the word God, but God is not just out there separate from creation, but we're all emanations of God. We're all part of the dream. We're all part of the dance. Okay? So it brings you right back into pantheism, which is absolutely occult, which is absolutely the opposite of what biblical theology teaches, where God is separate, where God is eternal, where God has no beginning and no end, and he spoke creation, into existence, but we are not just a dream in the mind of God, or dreams within dreams within dreams, kind of like in the Inception movie concept. It's an analogy for mystical spiritual beliefs. So there you go. I'm going to shut up and Thanks for watching.